we are honored to host the following expert on this topic, Brenda Campbell, Adjunct Instructor, Department of Anthropology, Sociology, Criminology, Troy University. I would like to extend a warm welcome to our panelists and thank them for taking the time to present on this important topic. Let's begin.
Hello, how are y'all? Hope you're having a great day. I don't know if I'm an expert, but I can tell you that I've worked in higher ed for 30 years and I've worked with lots of students who have different desires and needs, and some come in with their minds completely made up of what they want to do and then they change their minds, and then others come in with no idea. So today we're going to look at the Myers-Briggs type indicator and look at your preference to see if we can help you narrow things down and find what you're best suited for. So when you're growing up, I think when I was 3 years old, people started asking me, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I'm like, I don't know. I just picked something, and it was something that maybe I saw somebody else do. Like I thought I wanted to be a nurse in the 2nd grade. And then we got into dissecting frogs later on in junior high, and I knew that I did not want to do that. And it's really hard sometimes when people are asking you these questions about your future and you're not really sure because you want to do so much. I've had people come in and say, I really want to be a nurse because when I was born, I was a preemie and these nurses at Children's Hospital took care of me. It was just such an awesome experience and I want to give back. And that is such a good attitude and so admirable. But one of the things that we find is sometimes what we want to do is not what we're best suited for. And sometimes it doesn't even matter what your major is. Of course, if you're going to do something like accounting, then you would need an accounting major. But some particular careers and occupations are more geared toward liberal arts. So when people come to college and they have to decide on their major, sometimes they're a little intimidated by saying, I'm an undecided major, or some people call it undeclared, or an open major, that's another one, or some people just throw their hands up and say, I have no idea. Now, if you're in college, you've got a little time to think about this. So it's not something that you need to rush into. You've got up until the end of your sophomore year, which I wouldn't push it that far. That makes people a little too nervous. But you do have some time to make those decisions and make an informed decision. Elmhurst College website, I thought this was really interesting that I've had parents come in and say, I just want my son or daughter to make a lot of money. Well, you know, we don't really have that capability of just putting something out there. If we did, we'd be doing it, but it's helping those people find what they want. That is a lifetime of enjoyment. So Elmhurst College quotes that there's a recent study that's been done that students who don't just jump right in and make a final decision about their major actually are slightly a little more likely to graduate than those who decide in their first semester. The young lady who wanted to be a nurse because she was a preemie made it to nursing school, was accepted, and then decided this is not for me. And I remember her coming to my office and she said, my daddy is so upset because it's going to take me 2 more years to graduate. She said, I think I can push it into a 1.5 years, but here I am with all these nursing courses and I really want to be an elementary education teacher. And her daddy said, well, I'm just not going to pay for your wedding. And I said, he probably will. So you go ahead and do what you need to do. I went to her wedding. It was absolutely gorgeous. And when her daddy walked her down the aisle, he was so happy to see that she was in an occupation and a career that she really liked. And she's teaching elementary school students now around the Gulf Coast area of Alabama. So I hope she's safe tonight. You've probably heard of Kai Kite, motivational speaker, but primarily known as a classical violinist. And he talks about in this TED Talk how sometimes majors don't really matter, that people assume that he was a music major because he does play the violin, but he's a motivational speaker. And it was during one of his business classes that he actually learned what he wanted to do for the rest of his life. And now lots of corporations come to Kai for not only his motivational speaking, but his music. And he always starts out his speeches with music. So he's writing for Disney and all sorts of really big groups and is a multimillionaire. So he took something that he really loved but didn't want to major in and made it into where it fit his life. I have a friend who is in his 70s now, and he was always in business. He worked in business and in sales and was very successful at it. But when people asked him what he majored in college, he said art. And one of his friends looked at him and said, I didn't know that. Why'd you major in art? And he said, I liked it. And that's a good enough reason. He found what he needed within those courses that he took along with his art courses. So how do you find out the best path for you? Number one, many people find it in their general studies classes. You may get into a field that you had no knowledge about just on taking those general studies classes, which are so important in making for a well-rounded individual. Career exploration classes are really important once you get into college because they help you narrow down choices that may be sort of apparent to you, but you have some questions about. Career exploration classes are at most colleges 4 credits, so you're actually doing something that's very hands-on to help yourself and learning more about yourself during these classes. If you can shadow somebody just for a day, a couple of days, maybe one day a week, then that's very important. A student of mine who thought he wanted to be a surgeon went to UAB and he shadowed a surgeon and came back and he said, no, I'm changing to optometry. I said, but you've always said that you wanted to be a surgeon. And he said, but let's face it, Ms. Brenda, optometrists don't get called out in the middle of the night to do emergency surgery. He said, I'm looking at my rational choices and I really want a family and I want to be there for them. So he said, that's a wonderful path, but it's not the one for me. And I had to agree with him that it didn't fit his lifestyle. Internships are sometimes thought of as the end of your college career, that you do that in order to graduate. But you can do internships while you're in high school. You can do them during the summers while you're in college. Many of them are paid. So if you want to be an accountant, you might want to do an internship during their busy season, during tax season, so that you'll know what it's like. I remember one accounting student who came back after he had been at a major firm in Atlanta, and he said, I don't like this. I love working with numbers, but I don't like being locked in a room until tax season's over. So he found that there was another path he could go on. He wanted to represent celebrities as their accountant. So he was able to hone it to where he wanted it to be. Personal searches. Go out and look and see what's available. Sometimes we do put ourselves in a little tunnel. We see the ones around us. When I was going to college, I wanted to be a social worker because I thought that the lady who was the social worker in our town was just absolutely wonderful. Go to career fairs. Those are virtual now. Our school at Troy University, we have virtual career fairs that our students can sign into, and you have those at high school also. Talk to your advisors. Many times they'll be able to point you in a direction after they've talked with you to see what's important to you. And let's face it, everybody wants to get a job when they get through with their education. So look on Occupational Outlook Handbook. That's their website. Just click there and they can give you projections of how much money you can expect to make if you go into certain fields. if you are looking at graduating in 4 years or 5 years, what the projected job market is going to look at that time. So this will help you maybe hone in on what you want to do, just some suggestions. But the one we're going to work with today is a personality inventory. And there's lots and lots of these, but the one that I like to use is the Myers-Briggs type indicator. So I need you to do some things for me. This is going to be interactive, so I need you to use that Q&A box to put in some questions that you might have, or just to make some comments. This is sort of hard on the teachers like me that are very accustomed to interacting with their students, but I think we're doing what we can and we're making it work. So I know I've got 50 students at Troy University that we meet on Zoom and we're able to interact, but they're broken up into pods. So this, if you have any questions, just put them in your box. But here's what I need you to do. You need to get something to write on and something to write with. And let me just tell you, when you go to class, no matter where you go to school, you need those two things, because sometimes instructors may give you an assignment that you need to write something down and not just type it into your laptop or your iPad. So questions are welcome. Get your pen and pencil, or pen or pencil, and your paper ready to go. So just while you're getting that, we'll go over a little bit about Myers-Briggs type indicator. It's based on Carl Jung's theory of psychological types, and this was developed in the 1920s. And then Isabella Briggs Myers expanded it in 1940s and 50s when she developed the Myers-Briggs type indicator. And she worked with her mother on this, Catherine Briggs. It was first introduced in 1962. So some of the things that we're looking at now, the data goes back that far. And I know none of y'all were alive then, doubt your parents were. But research is ongoing on this, so we have to stay aware of percentages and things that change. And this is not just a type indicator that is used in one nation like the United States. It's used worldwide, and there's millions who take it every year, so there's so much data out there. So we'll be looking at 8 patterns that define 4 different dimensions of your personality. And your personality is your fairly consistent way of thinking, acting, and behaving, not dependent upon a situation. Because if we get in the grip, G-R-I-P, then that means we flip our personality, and then we'll come back to that general personality type again. So knowing your personality helps you identify your strengths and your preferences. It helps you find your skill set and hopefully hone in on what you want to do with your life. So why the Myers-Briggs? Because it deals with normal, natural preferences in the way that we get information and the ways that we make decisions. It's not a test of skills. There's no right or wrong answers. None are better, none are worse. You can't fail it. You can't pass it. In the end, you'll be able to look at it and decide if you agree with your type or not. Oops, not sure what happened there. So directions. First thing that I need you to do is to take your writing instrument and put it in the hand that you do not normally use. So if you're right-handed, put it in your left hand. And I need you to write in cursive your name, both first and last name. So I'm going to do it. So just think of how you felt when you did that. I've had people who have written their names, and I'm looking at mine, and it's not good. I can make it out because I know what it says. But if somebody else were reading it, they would think maybe somebody who was just learning to write had written that, or I don't know, that they might think that it's a drawing of some type. I'm not sure. I've seen some that people are ambidextrous and they're able to write with both hands equally well, but most people aren't. So when I asked how did it feel when you picked up your wrong hand, so to speak, or the one that you don't customarily use, how did it feel? And then I asked people to sign their name, first and last name, with the hand that they normally use. How did that feel? It felt natural. You didn't have to think about it. It was something that just came to you. You picked up the pencil or pen and you just started writing as you normally would. And some of those look like drawings too, but that's how people write, how they sign their names. When we use an unnatural preference, an opposite preference, then we're going against our nature. It's not what comes in our first thought. We can adjust it and we can try to make it fit, but it's just not going to feel right. It may feel a little bit, as some people say, weird. So that's what we're going to look at. On the Myers-Briggs, you're going to be learning about yourself and you're going to be exploring your preferences. So with your dominant hand, it just came naturally. And that's how your personality preferences are. It's what comes to you without hesitation. Now, does that mean that you're going to be completely one or the other? Not really. It means that you will be probably on a scale between these dimensions. But it's what comes to you without hesitation. So these are dichotomies. It means what's on the left is completely opposite of what's on the right. So I need you to think of these, like we said, your personality is your fairly consistent way of acting or thinking without being situational. So don't think too deep. We'll go into that in the end. But the first dimension we're going to look at is how you prefer to focus your attention and where do you get your energy. So extroverts are those people that feel pulled outward. They're very external. Introverts are those that are pushed inward. Extroverts are energized by other people, and extroverts are energized by inner resources and internal experiences. Extroverts act and then they reflect. Introverts reflect and then they act. Extroverts are friendly, talkative, easy to get to know, and introverts are reserved, quiet, a little harder to get to know. They're going to wade into it. Extroverts express emotions. I am so excited to see you. Where introverts keep those emotions inside. Extroverts need relationships and they don't mind interruptions. If they are talking with somebody and somebody else walks up, they can jump back and forth really quickly and still have those relationships going. Introverts need privacy and they don't like interruptions. I'm talking to someone. Excuse me, I'll be with you in just a moment. So extroverts give action and variety to life, and introverts give us depth. But the main thing is, remember, there's no right or wrong answer. Introverts may seem a little snobbish to extroverts, and introverts may seem a little bit shallow to extroverts, but we need each other. So extroverts focus on the outer world, external environment. Introverts, personal, inner world. Extroverts like to talk it out, where introverts like to think it out because they can reflect. They like to write down things. It gives them time to get their thoughts together. Extroverts feel the need to experience the world in order to understand it. And then once they understand it, they take action, and they're usually quick with their actions. Introverts like to understand before they experience. Where are we going? What do we need to do? And they think about it before they act. But we need each other for balance. So think of which one you are, extrovert or introvert. Which preference comes to you automatically? And again, people say, well, I'm right in the middle, but there's one tendency that you'll find. So extroverts, at the end of the week, they like to go to the big gathering. They want lots of friends around. They want to have a great time. That just really helps them. They're tired. They get their energy there. They're like drawing from other people. But when we're looking at introverts, at the end of the week, they may be really tired and they just want to go home and rest a little while. Now, it's not to say that the extroverts don't need their quiet time or the introverts don't need their time with their friends. Just that's where they draw their energy. So on your piece of paper, write down 3 things about your type that you believe that the opposite type misunderstands. Oftentimes we hear that extroverts don't really understand why introverts don't have an opinion. And introverts answer with that, well, I do have an opinion, but sometimes extroverts are talking so much that I can't get a word in edgewise. And so I just keep it to myself. Introverts sometimes don't understand why extroverts need to be around people so much. And the opposite is true. So if you were going into a career and you're an introvert, then you would know that you like that time to consider, you like your quiet times, and you like to be inside your own head and think things out instead of in an extroverted situation where people are just throwing out their ideas and you seem to get lost in it. This one is going to be a choice between the S and the N, and these are perceiving functions, and that's how you prefer to take in information. Sensing people and intuitive people. So this is the only part of these dimensions that you're not going to write down the first letter of the dichotomy that most agrees with your personality. Sensing people like data, they want to trust the facts, intuitive people are the ones that have patterns and they connect those, they like relationships. Sensing people enjoy living in the present and what's there, and then intuitive people like to look toward the future and anticipate what's coming up. Sensing people are very practical, and intuitive people are looking at the possibilities. What can we do if we only have this? And they're forward thinking. Sensing people like these definite, measurable concepts because that goes along with this facts and data. Intuitive people value fantasy, imagination. They're the ones that are thinking about what's going to be happening in the future. Sensing people learn by doing things step by step, and they enjoy that experience. And then intuitive people learn through hunches, theories. Sensing people begin with the parts, and then they develop a view of the design. I ordered something from Wayfair the other day. It came with all these parts. A sensing person would look at the instructions, read them, trust that data, and then put the different types of bolts and screws into certain piles, and then as they read the instructions, they could identify where their parts are, and then they would develop a final view of the design. Intuitive people jump in anywhere. Intuitive people, invariably, if you ask somebody, what do you do with the instructions when you get a box? They will sometimes say, I take them and throw them away, and then when I get through my stuff, sometimes it's not quite right, but it'll hold together usually. And I have a few bolts and screws left over, but they always give you extras. Intuitive versus sensing. So sensing people are really tolerant of the steps, and intuitive people like that variety, that jumping in anywhere. Sensing people may seem literal-minded to intuitives, and intuitives may seem a little bit impractical to the S's. So think about which ones you are, an S or an N. How do you take in information? Sensing people like concrete, realistic information. They make columns and lists, and they like their information. They like it in order. They don't like it scattered or random. And this is an example of how a sensing person would learn. The War of 1812 was in 1812. On the other hand, intuitive people work on hunches, connect the dots. In 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue. One of the ways that I learned students' names is by making a connection of where they went to high school. That's because I was a recruiter for a number of years, and that just helps me put students into a slot that I can identify with. So sensing and perceiving. Here's what I need you to do. Some people have a real problem with this. So write down everything that comes to mind when you think of apple. Sometimes people will stop at number 3. That's not quite enough. Keep on going. So sensing people will use empirical evidence like, which is data that is verified. They will describe an apple by its color, red, green, by its taste, sweet, sour. They use their senses in their descriptions. Intuitive people may start out with those descriptors that look very sensing, but in the end, their imaginations start to flow, and they're getting all of these words in and phrases. One time I had a girl that said the National Peanut Festival Fair. And people looked around and said, I have no idea. Why would you say that? And she said, because when I go to the National Peanut Festival Fair every year, I get a crumpled apple. So that's what I think about when I think of the word apple. Intuitive people will think of Apple computers, doctors, teachers, and they're more expansive in what they think. Sensing and intuitive people get directions differently. If you're given directions to a location to a sensing person, then they will want directions like you go to Highway 231, you turn left and go 1.4 miles. On the right, you'll turn onto Highway 105 and then go 0.3 of a mile, and then the house will be on your left. Intuitive people like landmark directions. If you go to Walmart and you turn right and then go down to the pink house and turn left, and then you're going to see a big tree, then turn left at the tree and you're right there. Different ways of perceiving are accepted by different groups. So some people would not understand the intuitive directions, where others might not understand the sensing directions. I need a landmark is often what people will say. The next 2 functions, and write down which one of those you chose. The next ones are between judging functions. Thinkers and feelers. And remember, feelers think and thinkers feel. So it's not to say that you can't be part of both. But thinkers make rational decisions. They decide with their heads, and feelers are the ones that decide with their hearts. Thinkers are very, 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 very fair. They're impersonal when they make decisions. When they look at a situation, they apply the rules, and they do it on an equal basis. Now, feelers, they're judging with the heart, so they're going to base their decisions on values, those things that they think are good or true or beautiful, and convictions, those things that they believe to be true. Not so impersonal. Thinkers are very concerned with truth and justice, and feelers are very concerned with relationships and harmony. They want to keep everybody happy. They don't want to disturb the apple cart. Thinkers are very objective and have outside opinions and are able to express those. Feelers step inside to the situation and they see things as a participant, so they're very empathetic. Thinkers are a little uneasy about expressing those feelings, but they're really good if you want somebody to critique an article that you're writing, or you want to critique a critique on any type of activity. They will tell you what the flaws are, and they will do it in a very straightforward way. They may not be really concerned about the feelings that come from it. Feelers show spontaneous feelings. They are very demonstrative. They're your huggers, the ones that clap for you, and they spontaneously appreciate if something goes really well and they're happy for you. They're the ones on Wheel of Fortune that are clapping for everybody else and patting them on the back and saying, that is so wonderful. T's are very concerned with consistency and fairness. And feelers, the F's, are the ones that are good at understanding situations. And they're the third-party bridge that we need sometimes, because they're trying to keep that harmony in the relationship and putting themselves in the situation. So F's may seem a little cold and condescending. I mean, they may think that the T's are a little cold and condescending, and the T's may see that F's is a little bit too emotional. They're not concrete enough. They change with the wind. Thinking types analyze consequences and implications. Now, feelers, they're your persuaders. Now, you want feelers to be the ones that are calling your case and making sure that the jury wants to listen to you. And then T's are the ones that find flaws in advance, and F's are making peace, and the T's hold consistency. They are consistent in their policies, what I'm trying to say. And then F's look at how others are going to feel if a situation occurs. T's are weighing the law and evidence, and F's are the ones that are arousing enthusiasm. T's stand against opposition because they're looking at those rules, and F's appreciate what is right and the thinker that expresses their opinion. T's will reform what needs to reform, and they're good at critiquing, so they find flaws that need to be corrected. And then feelers are the ones that can teach or sell something new to a group. So we really need each other for balance. So which one are you? Thinker or feeler? Remember, thinkers feel, feelers think. So your judging functions. How do you make decisions? T's are objective and impersonal, really good at critiques, but they don't like for emotions to get in the way. They'll downplay the emotion part. It's not about you. Sometimes you'll hear them say, it's not about you. We're just doing what's right. Feelers are subjective and personal. So they'll give you a personal opinion, which may not be so objective. They may be the ones that if you say, does this sound right or does this look good? They may tell you yes because they don't want to hurt your feelings, because their values and their emotions are going to guide this decision-making process, and they don't want to hurt other people's feelings. They want to keep that harmony. So thinking versus feeling. Here's a way that we sometimes use with college students because of the roommate situation being so prevalent. I give them the scenario. There are two of you who are roommates, and y'all are just alike. Y'all are very clean, you're very tidy, you wash your dishes when you're through with them, you make sure that everything's in its place and everything has a place. And then you have Mr. and Miss Nasty as your third roommate. And Nasty just doesn't get it. They leave their pizza boxes on the table. They go out and get those fast food cups that sweat on your coffee table, and it's your mother's coffee table, and she's let you have it to bring to school, and so you really want to take care of it. There's an aroma coming from their room that is definitely dirty clothes and dirty dishes, and you have to decide what to do about it. How do you handle it? Do the two of you clean it up for them? That would be a feeler. And the opposite of that, I've had people say, no, I'm just going to throw it out. They'll find their stuff gone. That's it. That's over. That's two extremes. I've had some that say, I would like just to sit down with them and negotiate and work out some type of compromise. Maybe I could help them the first time. And then after that, we could work at maybe them moving out if it doesn't work. So it's, how do you make decisions? And then I take it to a more professional level. If you're at work in your career and you're an HR manager and you have somebody who comes in late all the time, and work starts at 8, ends at 5, but this person always comes in at 8:30, and you just don't know why. And you go to that person finally and you say, what are we going to do about this? And some people who are very extreme on the thinking side will say, you got to go. They're fired. They need the rules. It's over. And then feelers will say, well, wait a minute. Let's look at it. Why did this happen? Maybe this is somebody who needs a flexible schedule. Are they important enough that we need to keep them instead of retraining somebody else? So we make decisions based on these preferences that we have, and not one is not better than the other, but we need each other to round it out. This is my favorite one, judging and perceiving. Judgers are those that are so organized. They like their structure and they want everything to be under control, and they like limits and categories, and they handle deadlines like champs. Now, your perceivers, on the other hand, they're the ones that are very flexible and they go with the flow, and they like to experience life as it happens. They're very curious. They like their freedom. They're comfortable with openness, and they'll meet the deadline, but it's going to be at the very end. So judging people are very good planners, but they may just seem real rigid and uptight to B's. And P's may seem really disorganized and messy to the J's, and a little irresponsible. I often say that if you go on vacation with a J, then they've got it all planned out. They know where you're going to stop, where you're going to eat. They have the coupons. They have they know exactly what's going to happen. They've made their reservations. They got the best rate. He's, on the other hand, they just jump in the car and drive. So not that one is better than the other. That is just the way they deal with their outer world. So judging types. structured, organized. Receivers are good at gathering information, and they prefer to keep their options open, but J's are the ones that want things settled just as soon as we possibly can, and they're good regulators and controllers. But the P's want to understand rather than to control. So we need each other for balance. And I can't say that enough. So how we are oriented to the outer world. J's are detailed, structured, controlling, decisive, or controlled. Sometimes they're controlling too. And everything in its place for everything, organized systems, and have to get it organized before we want to tackle a project. P's are spontaneous. They like to put assignments off to the end because they think that it will push them toward having a better project assignment. So is one better than the other? I don't know. I will tell you that one thing that we find with J's that's very common, if you make a list and you check it off as you do it, and if you don't get that done on the day that you proposed, but you want to carry that over to another day and then check it off, you're probably a J. J's will sometimes write things down on their list that they didn't even have on there, and they'll go back and check them off. It's great. P's don't have to have the list. They're thinking it in their heads. They keep their options open. If you ask a P to go to a movie or go do something, they just don't want to miss out on anything. So they might not give you an answer right then, but they will sometimes come back later and say, oh, okay, it's not that they're blowing you off. They're just waiting to see if something better comes up. So write down your 4-letter code. What we'll be doing with this is to look at your results and think about the parts of the material that are most like you, because there's going to be variation. And there's some parts that you'll say, that's just not like me at all. And then what do we do now? Look at your scores, see if you agree. A slight agreements might affirm a preference, but have some aspects of another, the opposite, that are present. Moderate usually agrees with the preference, but may agree with aspects of the opposite preference. And then clear may agree with one or maybe a couple of aspects of the opposite one, but it's pretty clear on your ID. And then very clear, some people just have their pictures by their types, and they just don't have any aspects of the other. So you decide, is it right? So look at the careers that correspond with your personality type. And most chosen careers, if you go to this top site with Myers-Briggs, it will take you into a career assessment site that will tell you what the top career paths are for people who have this personality type. And when we look at this, I'm just looking at, my brother's a mechanical engineer, and he is clearly an ISTJ, and mechanical engineers top on his list for most chosen careers. I am an ENFJ. Clergy is my top. Home economist, teacher, actor, counselor, like working with people. If you are an ISFJ, nursing, wonderful field, doctor, social service administrator, speech therapist. When you go to this career assessment website, it's not only going to give you the most chosen careers, it's also going to tell you what type of college or university instructor you would like. So if you're an EN, then you might like instructors who like to go in and have a discussion class. But if you're an IS, you might like instructors that go in and give facts and don't ask a lot of questions. This Truity test here, personality type finder, is a really good test for those people that are in the middle in a lot of these dichotomies. You're not quite sure what to do with it. And then CAP.org is the official publisher of the Myers-Briggs type indicator. And with that, you can actually go in, take the official test, the long form, and you get, for a fee of, I think it's $125, you get a personal consultation with one of their advisors. So there's a number of things there that you can do with this. People ask sometimes, well, how many people are there like me? You can tell that there's some of these personality types, 4 letters, that are more prevalent than others. So if you're in one of those lower percentage points, then you might need to realize that while your talents are really valuable and there's not as many of you, then there's not as many people who might understand you. So this is a great way that businesses use to get their employees to communicate better and to understand each other better. So my brother, who is an ISTJ, who's a mechanical engineer, has a really large percentage of the general population who take this test would score the same as him. But here I am, ENFJ, only 2.5%. So when you look at your code, not only is it going to help you with your career, but it's going to tell you some things that you might want to work on. So E's need to listen more, I's a little bit more assertive and use your influence because you thought it out. S for the sensing, work on a little bit of risk taking maybe, and then N's maybe a little more planning and attention to detail. T's, because they are seen as harsh, then you might want to soften that when you're giving feedback and work on your interpersonal relations with others. F's, the feelers, maybe look at how you're handling criticism, because F's tend to take it to heart very badly, and because they're such helpers, sometimes they don't do enough for themselves. J's, stress management, because everything's got to be planned, and then risk taking. Jump in the car and go somewhere sometimes and just not know what your destination is. And then P's might want to work on time management and decision making. So just some suggestions. So there's some print sources out there too. Let me end this and I will try to see if I can see if we have any questions and answers. Look like there's 2. What do you do if you're stuck between 2 options of what you want to do? If you're stuck between 2 options, let's say if you think that you're a little bit more extroverted in certain situations and then introverted in others, I find that that's true. People will sometimes want to look at taking a different test, and I can show you one of those. I believe I have it pulled up. When you start looking at these career tips, then that may help you. So the ENFJ personality types, when we're looking here, it's telling you different things. If you go through and you say, that just does not sound like me, then you might want to explore the other type. So in ENFJ, you could go and look at the opposite of that, like if you're stuck between the N and the S, just explore those options. I'll tell you what happens when you're in the grip. Because you have a natural tendency with this 4-letter code If you get really, really upset, then there's a problem that occurs, and you get really involved in and your emotions overtake you sometimes. Then an extroverted person who is intuitive and feeling and perceiving will suddenly become an introverted, sensing, judging, and thinking person. So that person who is holding it in, they're not talking a lot, they're seeing the big picture, and then all of a sudden they get really upset about something. They flip to the exact opposite of who they are. So extroverted people will get louder and louder and louder and louder and louder and louder and louder until they just stop talking. And then when that happens, you know that you've got an extrovert that's in the grip. You need to leave them alone, because when they stop talking, if you say, "What's wrong with you?" they're going to say, "Nothing, nothing is wrong with me." On the other hand, you get an introvert who starts talking and talking and talking, and they get louder and louder and louder, and the personality is going in the direct opposite. Then you know that they are about to explode. The good news is they'll both come back to exactly where they were before, because that's their general tendencies. Any other questions? Well, I hope I've helped in some way. Some of the things that we worry about when we go to college or we go away from home is that we're going to be different from everybody else. And the real truth of it is that we're all a lot alike. I remember going to one of my professors that I had for sociology when I was in my undergraduate, and I did my master's much later. And I said, I think he taught me sociology, and I said, I want to do my master's in sociology. My undergrad was in psychology and rehab. I thought I wanted to be a social worker, never was. I knew I wanted to help people. And when I asked him about going into sociology education, he said, "No, you'll never get a job. They don't hire a bunch of sociology people. Nah, just do something else." So I thought, well, I really like criminal justice, so I'll try that. And I did, and I loved it. First class I taught as an adjunct was criminal justice ethics. And then right after that, 25 years ago, less than a year after I had graduated with my criminal justice degree, the same professor called me and said, "Hey, Brenda, I really need you to teach sociology." And I've been teaching it for 25 years now. So when we think we have this path that we're going to do, and then sometimes we just need to hang on and take the ride. Yes, I know everybody's a little nervous about what they're going to be doing the rest of their lives, but hang in there. If you wait and you find what you love, then the money will follow. Let's see. One more question. Where can we find those personality websites you mentioned? There's a couple that are here on the Myers-Briggs website. There's some, if you look at my last slides, those tests, personality tests, are going to be pretty easy to find if you do an internet search. And if you go into a career exploration class, it's going to be really easy to look at those. Okay, it looks like TJ says we're through, and I appreciate y'all joining us and hope you have a great day. And if there's ever anything that I can do to help you, please let me know. I'm at Troy University.